My former in-laws accused me of being the reason they had no grandchild, and my ex-husband sided with them despite my clear fertility results. They insulted me by labeling me broken during a family dinner, which became my breaking point. I packed my things and left. 2 years later, I bumped into my ex-in-laws while happily pregnant with my new husband. Now, my ex is bombarding me with calls, blaming me for his loss of inheritance. I, a 32-year-old woman, was married to Jake, 34, for 5 years. In the beginning, our relationship was good. When we first met, Jake was charming, funny, and easy to connect with. I truly believed I had found someone who would always support me. However, everything shifted after we tied the knot. Jake's parents, especially his mother, began pressuring us to have children almost immediately after the wedding. Initially, their comments were light-hearted, like asking when they could expect a grandchild, but soon it became their sole topic of conversation. For context, Jake is an only child, and his parents were highly controlling. His mom was the kind of person who meticulously planned every aspect of life: how Jake should live, who he should marry, and what his future should look like. I didn't realize it while dating, but Jake's family had significant influence over his decisions. He craved their approval for everything, especially his mom's, which created frequent tension between us. After about 2 years of marriage, the pressure from his parents escalated from mildly irritating to unbearable. We had been trying for a child without success, so I decided to see a doctor to check if everything was all right on my end. My tests came back perfectly fine, which reassured me. Naturally, I suggested Jake undergo testing as well to rule out any issues. That's when things began to unravel. Jake adamantly refused to get tested, behaving as though I had insulted him just by suggesting it. He insisted he couldn't possibly be the problem and wouldn't even entertain the conversation. I felt deeply frustrated because I only wanted to understand what was going on so we could move forward, but Jake was stuck in a defensive, prideful stance. He acted as if it was impossible for him to have an issue, and he seemed embarrassed by the mere thought. His refusal to address the possibility left me feeling worse and doubting myself, even though my doctor assured me everything was fine. Meanwhile, Jake's parents continued to bombard us with invasive questions and comments. Every visit to their house revolved around discussions of grandchildren, no matter how much I tried to deflect or explain that these things take time. Jake's mother, in particular, would shoot me these condescending glances as if she were disappointed in me. Eventually, she began making passive-aggressive remarks directly to me, hinting that she hoped I wasn't the issue. One evening, during a family dinner with several of Jake's relatives, his mom blatantly remarked that she hoped I wasn't damaged, in a loud, faux-concerned tone, ensuring everyone could hear. I was utterly mortified. Jake, instead of standing up for me, just awkwardly laughed it off like it wasn't a big deal. That hurt more than anything else. I felt he should have defended me, but instead, he allowed his parents to trample over me. When I tried to confront Jake about it later, he dismissed my concerns, saying it was just his mom's way of joking. A few months after that, another family dinner ended with Jake's mom escalating her attacks. She worked herself into hysterics, crying about how she was getting older and accusing me of destroying her dreams of having grandchildren. She started yelling directly in my face, calling me a broken woman and a disgrace to womanhood. The room fell silent and I was mortified. I fought hard to stay calm and avoid disrespecting her. I knew she enjoyed embarrassing me in front of her family, but this was completely out of line. I glanced around, hoping someone might say something, but everyone kept staring at their plates. The only response was Jake's father, who nodded along in agreement with his wife. Jake, like the rest of his family, stayed quiet, focusing on his plate as if nothing was happening. That was the final straw for me. After everything I had endured while trying to figure out why we couldn't have children, Jake still wouldn't defend me. Watching him sit there silently, without even looking at me, made me realize where our marriage truly stood. That night, when we got home, I packed my things and told Jake I was leaving. He barely reacted, almost as if he didn't care. He had become so accustomed to prioritizing his parents that he didn't even notice he was losing me. That indifference only fueled my anger. How difficult is it to stand up for someone you claim to love? I walked out that day and never looked back. Leaving wasn't easy, but it was the best decision I've ever made. After I left, I stayed with a friend for a few months while figuring out my next steps. I filed for divorce and, surprisingly, it all went smoothly. Jake didn't contest it, and we ended things quietly. Once the divorce was finalized, I shifted my focus to rebuilding my life. I got back into my career, surrounded myself with supportive friends, and eventually met someone new, my current husband Sam, who is 35. That Sam has been a breath of fresh air. He is the complete opposite of Jake in so many ways. He listens, communicates openly, and always stands by me no matter what. We dated for only a year before I got pregnant, and we decided to marry quickly. I can honestly say the time I've spent with Sam, even in this shorter span, has been far better than all the years I spent with Jake and his family. Recently, while shopping at the mall with Sam, I ran into Jake's parents. It had been 2 years since I last saw them. By then, I was visibly pregnant, and their reactions were priceless. They were stunned, though they tried to hide it with polite small talk. I could tell they were shocked to see me expecting. A small part of me felt vindicated after years of them belittling me and blaming me for not being able to conceive. Here I was, happily pregnant. I quickly said goodbye and forgot about the encounter almost immediately. Sam and I were busy preparing for our baby, and I had no interest in dwelling on the past. But about a week after that mall meeting, I began receiving texts and calls from Jake. Initially, I ignored them, assuming his parents had told him about my pregnancy and new marriage and that he was just being nosy. However, he didn't stop. Eventually, I opened one of his messages. He was furious. After his parents saw me pregnant, they confronted him about our marriage and why we never had children. Apparently, Jake had allowed them to believe I was the issue and even encouraged the idea. When they saw me pregnant, they realized they had been deceived. His parents were furious, accusing him of wasting years of their lives, under the false belief that they wouldn't have grandchildren because of me. It turned out they had always planned to leave him a significant inheritance, but upon discovering his lies, they cut him off completely. Jake, of course, blamed me for all of this. He claimed that if I hadn't flaunted my pregnancy in front of his parents, none of this would have happened. He accused me of ruining his life since he lost everything, including the inheritance he had been counting on. I was in disbelief that he could pin this on me. All I had done was move forward with my life, and the consequences of his lies were not my responsibility. I haven't replied to his messages and don't intend to. I'm happy with where I am now and refuse to get involved in his family drama. As far as I'm concerned, Jake created this mess for himself. If he hadn't allowed his parents to mistreat me or lied to them about why we couldn't conceive, he wouldn't be in this position. Although I'm confident in my decision, I shared the story with a friend yesterday, and she said I was wrong to leave Jake the way I did. She suggested I should have pushed harder for him to get tested and accused me of being petty for interacting with his parents. I can see how my actions might have come across as petty, but I don't regret them. I never intended to cause Jake harm, though I have to admit that seeing him face the consequences of his actions feels like an added bonus. Regardless, my husband has reassured me that my friend's opinion is completely baseless, but I can't help wondering if there's a small grain of truth in what she said. So, am I wrong for leaving my ex-husband after his family insulted me by calling me broken? And should I feel bad about not being guilty over him losing his inheritance? Update 1. Things have become way more chaotic and I really need to vent. After posting my original story, I thought that would be the end of it, but I couldn't have been more wrong. Jake has been constantly bombarding my phone with calls. I blocked his number, but then he started messaging me through social media accounts. Once I blocked him there, he created new profiles to continue contacting me, even resorting to calling me through different phone numbers. I haven't responded to any of it, but over time, his messages have turned increasingly desperate and angry. At first, his text blamed me for ruining his relationship with his parents, but now, his accusations have spiraled completely. He's insisting that I owe him because, in his words, I destroyed his future. He keeps saying that none of this would have happened if I had just stayed in the marriage. It's absolutely exhausting. A few people in the comments on my original post agreed with my friend and asked why I didn't try harder to convince Jake to take the fertility test. Let me clarify that. I absolutely did try. I repeatedly, every single time I brought up the subject, Jake completely shut me out. He acted like I had deeply betrayed him just by mentioning the possibility. On some occasions, he wouldn't even speak to me for days after I asked about it. I did everything I could to remain patient and supportive, but there's only so much you can do when someone is that unyielding. Eventually, I had to accept that I couldn't force him to do something he wasn't willing to consider, and for the sake of my mental health, I had to let it go. Others accused me of being petty for flaunting my pregnancy in front of Jake's parents. To set the record straight, that was never my intention. I didn't plan to run into them at all. I was simply out shopping with my husband, focused on my own life. It wasn't like I was actively seeking them out just to rub my pregnancy in their faces. That said, I won't lie, it was satisfying to witness their shocked reactions. After enduring years of insults, humiliation, and being made to feel like I was the problem, it felt incredibly validating to prove otherwise. However, I wasn't trying to hurt Jake or stir up drama. I was just living my life, and seeing them that day ended up being an unexpected confidence boost. Now, things have escalated even further. Jake has not only been messaging me, He somehow discovered my address. I have no idea how he found out where I live, and it genuinely terrifies me. 2 nights ago, he showed up at my house. He banged on the door for at least 15 minutes, yelling that he needed to talk to me. Thankfully, my husband Sam was home. He immediately confronted Jake and told him to leave, but Jake refused. He kept saying he just needed a chance to explain himself. Sam firmly shut him down, warning that we'd call the police if he didn't leave. Jake finally left, but not before shouting that I had ruined everything for him. The whole experience was incredibly unsettling. I can't help but worry that he might try something even more extreme if this continues. Many people have asked how I learned about Jake losing his inheritance. Thankfully, I didn't hear the details directly from him, but I was able to piece things together from his angry messages. Apparently, Jake's parents felt completely betrayed when they discovered that the real reason they never had grandchildren wasn't because of me, but most likely because of Jake. They were furious when they realized he had allowed them to blame me for years without ever correcting their assumptions. Since their primary focus was on having grandchildren, they decided Jake was no longer deserving of the inheritance they had planned to leave him. From what I understand, they've now cut him off entirely, both financially and emotionally. Jake is devastated. which is probably why he's lashing out at me so intensely. I don't feel guilty about him losing his inheritance. What was I supposed to do? Stay in a toxic marriage just to keep his parents in the dark? That's not my responsibility. Jake made his choices. He could have told his parents the truth at any point, but instead, he let them treat me horribly and never once defended me. No, I don't feel bad about what happened to him. If anything, it feels like karma finally caught up with him. That said, I can't deny that his behavior is making me uneasy. He seems to be unraveling. My husband and I have already discussed taking additional precautions to protect ourselves. We're considering installing security cameras around the house and possibly filing a restraining order if Jake doesn't back off. I want to believe he'll eventually stop, but something tells me he's not ready to let this go. It's clear he's spiraling, and I genuinely don't know what he might do next. So, this is where things stand right now. I thought I had closed this chapter of my life, but Jake clearly had other plans. I just hope he realizes soon that I'm not the one to blame for his problems. All I did was move forward with my life, and I'm happier than I've ever been. I just want to be left alone to enjoy the life I've built with my husband and the baby we're expecting. If Jake doesn't stop, we're prepared to take further action and involve the authorities. Hopefully, it won't come to that, but at this point, who knows? Thank you to everyone who commented on my original post and offered advice. It really helped me feel confident that I wasn't wrong for leaving Jake or for feeling the way I do now. I'll provide another update if anything changes, but for now, I'm focusing on the future and doing my best not to let Jake's antics pull me back into the past. Update 2. Hi everyone. I didn't expect to be back with another update so soon, but things have taken an unexpected and chaotic turn. After my last update, I thought Jake would finally back off. Showing up at my house seemed like it should have been the limit, right? Well, not for Jake. To him, that was just the beginning. Now he's come up with a completely new plan, and it's just as absurd as it sounds. After Sam and I made it abundantly clear that Jake wasn't welcome anywhere near us, he started flooding me with messages again. This time, though, his approach changed. Instead of angrily blaming me for everything, Jake suddenly switched to pleading with me for help. He began sending me messages saying things like, "I need you to talk to my parents," and "You owe me this." It was a complete shift from his earlier behavior. At this point, I was both baffled and curious about what he was trying to pull. Apparently, Jake is now convinced that if I speak to his parents and explain the situation, they'll reconsider and restore his inheritance. He wants me to approach them, tell them it was all just a big misunderstanding, and somehow persuade them that he's still deserving of the wealth they had planned to leave him. At first, I thought he was joking. I mean, there's no way he genuinely believes I'd do something like that, right? But he's completely serious. He's acting like I can wave a magic wand and fix everything for him. He even had the audacity to claim that if I hadn't run into his parents at the mall, none of this would have happened and he'd still be set for life. I couldn't believe the nonsense he was spouting. It was astonishing that he didn't see how his own lies and actions had led to this mess. For years, he let his parents treat me horribly while hiding the truth, and now he expects me to clean up after him? The sheer lack of self-awareness was both maddening and unsettling. It takes an incredible level of arrogance to refuse to take responsibility for your own behavior. I didn't reply to any of his delusional messages, but his tone quickly shifted from begging to issuing threats over just a few days. He began sending messages like, "If you don't help me, I'll make sure everyone knows you're a liar, and you'll regret this." It's clear he's spiraling, and now he's resorting to threats to try to manipulate me into doing what he wants. Fortunately for me, I'm no longer afraid of Jake. Not the way I used to be. After everything he's put me through, I know his behavior's mostly bluster. There's no chance I'm getting involved in his family's drama again. I've managed to avoid him for now by blocking his latest numbers and accounts, but I have this lingering feeling that he won't stop. He's already shown up at my house once, so what's to stop him from trying again? Sam and I have been discussing the possibility of getting a restraining order, but we're still figuring out the best course of action. I don't want the situation to escalate further, but I also can't live like this, constantly wondering if Jake is going to show up out of nowhere with more demands or threats. And if I refuse to give in, would he actually try to hurt me? His state of mind seems so unstable that I can't entirely rule it out. To make matters worse, I've learned that Jake's parents have been talking to some mutual acquaintances. Apparently, they now believe I'm to blame for the breakdown of their family. They think I manipulated Jake into hiding the truth from them, and that I'm the reason they're cutting him off. I don't even know how to begin processing that. It's as if everyone in Jake's life is living in complete denial about who he truly is, and I'm stuck in the middle of their twisted version of reality. I've been doing my best to ignore Jake's attempts to reach me, but I'm not sure how much longer I can avoid confronting this whole mess. All I want is to focus on my pregnancy and the life Sam and I are building together, but Jake is making it impossible to move forward. Instead of trying to fix things on his own, he's trying to drag me down with him. I refuse to let that happen. I haven't decided on my next step yet, but I'm considering reaching out to Jake's parents, not to help him, but to set the record straight. If they want to blame me for their son's lies, that's their problem, but I'm not going to sit back and let them spread false rumors about me. On the other hand, I'm worried that any contact with them might make the situation worse. It feels like a no-win scenario. So, that's where things stand. Jake has gone from blaming me to begging and threatening, and I honestly have no idea what his next move will be. I can only hope he eventually realizes I'm not going to help him and backs off before things spiral further out of control. I'll keep you all posted if anything else happens, but for now, I'm just trying to figure out what to do next. Thank you again for all your support. I never imagined this situation would escalate this far, but knowing I'm not alone in dealing with it has been a huge comfort. Update 3! Hi everyone, I have both bad news and good news. The bad news is that this will be my final update. I know many of you have been following my story and checking in to make sure my baby and I are safe, and I'm so grateful for that. As for the good news, I'm finally free of Jake. After Jake's latest round of pleading and threats, I was really starting to feel uneasy. My husband Sam and I had already been discussing the idea of moving for a while, and with everything going on, we decided it was the perfect time to make a fresh start far away. We found a new place in a completely different state, packed up all our belongings, and left without telling anyone where we were headed. I was completely over the chaos, and besides, being pregnant meant I needed to focus on myself and the baby. But just before we moved, something happened that I still can't wrap my head around. Remember how Jake's parents blamed me for everything? Well, it turns out they finally decided to confront Jake directly. I learned about this through one of Jake's cousins, who has since become a close friend. Apparently, the confrontation was explosive. At first, Jake tried to shift all the blame onto me, doing his best to manipulate his parents into continuing to despise me so he could reclaim his inheritance. However, his parents were determined to understand why Jake was so desperate for the inheritance in the first place. From their perspective, they had already set him up for success in life. They helped him land a great job, purchased a house for him, paid off the mortgage, and even assisted him in making smart investments so he'd have assets to fall back on if needed. Eventually, though, they managed to get the truth out of Jake. As it turns out, Jake had been deceiving them about his financial situation for years. He told them he was saving money, working hard, and preparing to take over the family business. But in reality, he was blowing through their financial support on who knows what. While I was working hard to support us during our marriage, Jake had been secretly spending enormous amounts of money on ridiculous things like online gambling and extravagant vacations with his friends. He never told his parents and maintained this facade of being a responsible son to ensure he stayed in their will. When his parents discovered this, they were absolutely livid. Not only did they cut him off financially, but they also officially disowned him, telling him they no longer wanted any relationship with him. The inheritance he had been so desperate to regain was permanently gone. Apparently, Jake's parents had consulted their extended family, who suggested they were being too harsh by withholding Jake's inheritance over something he wasn't aware of. They only confronted him so he could come clean, allowing them to figure out a way forward together. In fact, they were even planning to reinstate him in their will as long as he admitted to his mistakes. But once they uncovered the truth, any possibility of that happening vanished entirely. I have no idea what Jake plans to do now, but I'm relieved that it's no longer my concern. From what I've heard, he's scrambling to figure out his next steps, and I wish him the best of luck with that. After learning all this, I felt an immense sense of relief. For years, I believed I was the one who had failed, that maybe I hadn't tried hard enough to mend things with Jake or his family. But now it's clear Jake was hiding so much more than I ever knew, not just from me, but from everyone. His parents have finally seen him for who he really is, and honestly, it feels like karma has come full circle. As for Sam and me, we've settled into our new home in another state, and everything is going wonderfully. I feel so much safer now that we're far from Jake and all his drama. We even installed security cameras as an extra precaution, but so far, there's been no sign of Jake or any more troubling messages. Before we moved, we filed a restraining order to ensure he couldn't follow us or cause more problems. It feels amazing to know he no longer has any way to bother us. And here's the icing on the cake. Jake's parents actually reached out to me. Through the same cousin who told me about their confrontation, I received a message from them apologizing for how they treated me all those years. They admitted they had no idea Jake had been lying to them and expressed regret for everything they put me through. I'm not sure if I'll ever respond to their apology, but it was nice to get some form of acknowledgement after everything I endured. It's incredible how much things have changed. I'm so thrilled to finally focus on my own life without all the drama hanging over me. Sam and I are beyond excited about our baby, and I'm grateful that we're now in a calm, happy place where we can truly enjoy this new chapter. The past few months have been incredibly stressful, but I feel like we've come out stronger on the other side. Thank you to everyone who has supported me throughout this entire ordeal. Your advice and encouragement gave me the strength to keep moving forward, and I appreciate it more than words can express. That's it for now.